Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2672 of The Tom Woods Show. I'm at Mises University this week at the Mises Institute, so I'm in an Airbnb. I don't have my books behind me, but old Scott Horton, he's got his books behind him because he, unlike me, is hard at work doing important things as part of his mission. And I want to, well, first of all, if you don't know Scott Horton, I'm shocked, but I will tell you that he hosts the Scott Horton Show. He's got other things that we're going to talk about a little bit later, including an extremely successful joint podcast with a friend of the Tom Woods Show we'll talk about. But he is the author, most recently, of Provoked, which is an extraordinary book about the war in Ukraine, which the war that just does not seem to go away. But just the other day, I saw Dave Smith promoting Scott's book, Enough Already, on the war on terror. Scott is just everywhere. He's, when he's not physically present, his books are nevertheless haunting the minds of the bad guys. So welcome back, Scott.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that.
All right.
Also, I run an institute, the Libertarian Institute, that you're on the board of directors of.
The Libertarian Institute. I'm sitting here thinking if I talk long enough, the thing I'm forgetting about Scott is going to come to my mind, and it didn't. So, the Libertarian Institute.
I got a lot of jobs. Antiwar.com is a thing of mine, too. I mean, I don't take credit for the great work that goes on there, but I'm the editorial director at Antiwar.com.
Yeah. Look, I've just given up. It's, I have a few guests. I can only say a couple of things they do, because otherwise it would be here all day.
I should just have a little list of bullet points and just hold it up.
I know. Look, everybody, just read this.
Pause that.
Scan that into your brain. All right. Well, look, we have some real things in the news to talk about, but I think I would like people to know, even though, every successful podcast is in some way in competition with the old Tom Woods Show here, but I feel like we're all on the same team. We're all trying to get a very important message out. So I could not be happier for the wild success that you've had with the release and launch of your brand new podcast. I won't say what it's called, and I won't say who the co-host is. I want you to say that.
Yeah, it's called Provoked. And I didn't name it that, but my co-host did, Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made.
Yeah, and old Daryl Cooper, who was just here on the Tom Woods Show recently. No doubt got the Tom Woods Show bump. It's even... it may not be quite the Tucker bump, but it's not nothing. So
and I think he got what surely will be the biggest Tucker episode ever. It was already over 1 million views. I think it was 1.5 million views the last time I saw, where he did a deep dive on the history of Jeffrey Epstein and that whole scandal.
Yeah, if you listen to just the first 15 minutes of Daryl Cooper talking to Tucker about Epstein, just the first 15 minutes, you will immediately say, the possibility that all of these factors are simply coincidental cannot be entertained. Like something is going on here. There's no way. There's way too many coincidences going on here. So that's fantastic. So what do you guys talk about on the podcast? Does it have a theme, or is it? Because if it's just Scott Horton and Daryl Cooper talking, that would be a great theme.
So far, it's mostly me interviewing him, but we got plenty of time and plenty of opportunity to expand the show and tackle all kinds of things. Yeah, I think I'm working on. I got my buddy Josh wrote me a new song for the intro. So we're really going. The intro is like chun, kind of this hard hitting thing, like it's all breaking news coverage stuff. But it's really meant to be more just me and Daryl, hopefully, like sitting back in our chairs, kind of shooting the shit a little bit more, and just talking about things and covering. Not, I'm obviously Mr. Foreign Policy all the time, but I also like complaining about other stuff. So I think the plan is for us to just talk about all kinds of things. Although there's so much going on right now, especially in foreign policy, and that's what I know most about, and he knows a hell of a lot about. I wouldn't say that's what he knows most about, because he knows so much about so much domestic stuff. That like you can't compare necessarily. I wouldn't know how to compare, but he's certainly an expert on the Middle East and Eastern Europe and all the rest of this. He was going to be the co-author on Provoked, the book, But then I just ran way out ahead of him, and he was too busy doing too many other things, and I just ended up writing it myself. Kind of same thing happened with you and me and Enough Already there. It was like, well, Tom, I kind of already wrote the book, so I'm just going to go ahead.
Yeah. Well, look, I almost wrote Meltdown with Bob Murphy.
Okay.
But I got advice from my agent. He said, for some reason, co-authored books just don't do as well, and publishers aren't as happy about them. So just write it yourself. And I was all full of self-doubt. Well, how could I? And I just did it. So that's the way to go. So
we knocked it out. And that's a fantastic book, by the way, for people who've never read Meltdown. It's so good about the 2008 crash and what caused it.
It's the opposite of Provoked in that you could read it, while you're sitting on the toilet, really. You could just zip right on through it.
Yeah.
All right. No.
This thing might get wet in the bathroom. The humidity would end up warping the pages over time.
Yeah, it's so heavy you drop it, and that's not a place you want to drop things. So,
yeah.
All right.
Daryl Cooper is great. And by the way, I was on Tucker too, so everybody go watch my episode on Tucker.
Know,
I've walked them all through Enough Already, basically, and got something done there.
So you were so good on Tucker. So Bob Murphy was recently on. Oh no, I was on his show. We were talking about you at the beginning, and he said, I knew Scott knew a lot, but I didn't know that he could sit there for 3 hours, giving us this narrative with all these names and laying it all out the way he did. And he said that just everything about it was pitch perfect, the way you did it, that you were able to balance presenting it in a way that could be absorbed by somebody, but also presenting it in a way that basically told the world, look, I know what I'm talking about here. So we were very happy that no longer is it just our little libertarian world who gets to know how talented you are. Now, the rest of the world gets to know it. So very well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But this has always kind of been a problem of mine, even going back to when I was a cab driver, where kind of at the end of the conversation, people would be like, wow, you really do know a lot of stuff. Or, wow, you sure are interested in foreign policy. When no, the lesson was supposed to be, wow, Bill Clinton really is evil and we should be very anti-government, right? The story wasn't supposed to be about me at all.
No, I get it. But you have to understand.
Pick something up there.
But Murphy and I are both ex-academics. So that's the way we think, is look at the knowledge this guy has. Yeah, so don't worry about that. We're just oddballs. We're just analyzing it that way. Well, with regard to your podcast with Daryl, I would say, just to reassure you, that what so many of us would love is, in effect, what it would be like to be listening in on a telephone conversation between the two of you. Just the two of you talking would be fantastic. With no preparation, just talk. And I would love to see where that goes.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, is we're really great pals, but we don't talk on the phone that much. I mean, me and Dave Smith talk a lot more often, for example, than me and Daryl. So we're sort of just saving it all up for the podcast.
Which is great.
Which is much better, really, for that. Yeah. So, and he's just so smart, man. I'm names and dates boy, but he really has a lot to say, right? He's got deep analysis of these things in a way that I just don't. Like, I went back and read a lot of Justin Raimondo when I was researching for Provoked, of course. And I'm the one who put all those links in there. So it's not plagiarism for me to poach them all back out again. But man, Justin would have entire giant paragraphs or sometimes entire articles where he's just saying things. It's not names and dates and assertions of fact and demonstrating historical this or that. It's just him talking about the way things are regarding whatever. And in a way that I don't do that, but Daryl certainly does, right? He has all this, wisdom basically, right, to impart about all this stuff. He'll go, I was thinking about that. And then he'll say some really smart stuff. And so I just sit back and like, hey, let this dude go, man. It's fine with me. For all of my blathering, I'm an interview host. So I'm perfectly happy just to interview Daryl once a week. What the hell? I don't care. That's fine.
That's true. And that'd be great. But I do think you're selling yourself short. But I'm not gonna argue that.
That's why I do your show.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
You interview me here.
All right, which is indeed what I want to do. So I actually want to cast our minds back 4 years, because it was right about this time, almost exactly to the day, 4 years ago, that you became one of the few ever guest hosts on the Tom Woods Show. You filled in for me while I was in the hospital. And you had McKnight. Is it Dan McKnight?
Yeah.
Defend the Guard. Yeah. You had him on as the guest. And I've never had him on before with me, but you had him on to talk about Defend the Guard. And I think you talked to him again not that long ago. So I wonder.
Yeah, I just had him on my show.
Yeah. Okay. So can you take just a couple minutes to explain to people what this is and where we're at with it? Because the word is that Pete Hegseth is not opposed to it. But of course, once you get in power, then we all know that your brain changes.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, we have, tepidly good news on that front, which I'll get to in a second. But the basic theory is that the Defend the Guard is model legislation that these guys, who are all combat veterans from BringOurTroopsHome.us, they're all veterans of the Iraq and Afghan wars. And the push is to get the states to pass laws making it illegal for the governor to turn over the National Guard to the president's authority to use in foreign combat without a declaration of war from the Congress, as is their responsibility under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, of course. So the thing of it is that on one hand, yes, it's a radical step where the veterans are trying to coerce through their Democratic voting bloc political pressure and power to get the states to pass laws to force the governor to interpose himself between his troops and the president, but only to force him to obey the rules in the basic founding charter of the nation state in the first place. That's the law under the Constitution. And they've been abusing that power ever since, obviously, the war in Korea. But the last time they declared war was against Romania in 1942. And so these guys are saying enough of that. They're the ones who were used and abused. And Dan was first a Marine and then Army and then was Idaho National Guard. And he was a sergeant and was in charge of a group of guys stationed out there in Afghanistan and fighting just as hard as the other guys. Only, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think he said there was a detachment of Marines and then the 82nd Airborne, both of which treated his group like stepchildren, and they didn't have the equipment that they needed to fight the war. He famously got on a satellite phone and called the governor of Idaho, Jim Rich, who's now a senator. Hope I said that name right. I think that's right. And said, "Hey, man, I need equipment. My guys need guns and ammo and whatever it is, and we're out here fighting a war, and we've been left behind," kind of thing, and caused a stir with that. So, in other words, he's known for going the extra mile for his men. And he came home and he was all pissed off, and he read Fool's Errand, I think it was, and decided he wanted to get involved, and he founded BringOurTroopsHome.us. And then it's kind of a cool origin story here where he and his buddy Diego Rivera and a few others went to Capitol Hill on the theory that, hey, they're combat veterans. They'll be able to get some conversations going, hopefully. And I forgot exactly what the mission was at the time. Doesn't matter. Because the point is no one paid them any mind whatsoever. All this stuff about, you can't talk about it if you weren't in the Army. Well, these guys were in the Army and they can't talk about it either. So, okay. And now, but lesson learned on the first try. They never went back to Washington again. They said, we're going for the states thing. And of course, this comes from Michael Bolden at the 10th Amendment Center. Sorry I should have said that right up front. This was the model legislation came from there. And they worked with a guy named Pat McGeehan, who's a great
West Virginia.
War veteran, from West Virginia. And that was where it started. And then they've just pushed it on from there. And they've had a lot of near misses. We've gotten it through many committees, gotten it through the House, got it through the Senate, but never quite both and to the governor's desk yet. And it would be, quite frankly, we would need probably a governor to champion the thing.
Yeah.
To feel like he had no choice but to really just be committed to it.
Because it's very hard to imagine, an American governor now having the stones, even if this thing passed, to actually carry it through when push comes to shove,
Well, so now that's an interesting subject. So first of all, we have had veto-proof, super-duper majorities in some Senates and Houses around the country, right? We just haven't been able to get all our stars to align. So it would be a difficult fight, but it is possible to essentially make a governor sign this thing, or even
make
get
him sign it. But I mean, when
I know,
when the president is demanding what's he going to do? Is he going to be tough as nails or not? Hey, everybody, yet another catastrophic thing Obamacare did was it took away an option you might have wanted. Instead of an expensive plan that covers everything under the sun, how about a much cheaper plan that covers just the big things? Well, that option may be gone in traditional insurance, but Crowd Health, the health insurance alternative, has just rolled out its Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle, so you're ready for those rare but potentially devastating black swan events in life. With Crowd Health, you stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. My family and I are huge Crowd Health fans. You could not pay us enough to go back to the old way. Crazy premiums, opaque policies, forget it. Now, with the Black Swan membership, picture this: healthcare for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. And what if something major happens? You pay the first $15K, then the Crowd steps in to help fund the rest. It feels like the choices we used to have before Obamacare. And of course, you'll join the Crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Black Swan moments might be rare, but good health insurance alternatives shouldn't be. Get started today for as low as just $80 per month for your first 3 months by using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS.
There's two things about that. The first thing is that at least it would be a controversy.
Yeah.
That they would be, put in opposition this way. And they would say the supremacy clause. And then the other side of the argument is, no, the supremacy clause says right there is in pursuant to the Constitution, not to whatever the national government wants in violation of the Constitution. And that's the whole purpose of doing this. It's James Madison, the principal author of the Constitution himself. It's his Kentucky resolutions that they're basing this on, right? So that's the thing, is these are right-leaning guys. These are not like Ron Kovic, born on the 4th of July, hippies. These are conservative and libertarian anti-war veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Combat vets of these wars. And they're saying, look, man, we were used and abused and we're drawing the line. You're not going to do this to the guys that come after us. And we're going to force you to stick up for them. So then at that point, if it is the law, then the governor can either just roll right over or at least fight about it for a minute. I don't think any of us really doubt that the president would win if it came down to him, like actually over the governor's order, over the governor's head, just issuing orders straight to the officers. They'd probably do what he said. You know what I mean? I don't know. But the other thing is really step one is the first step is just forcing the thing through in the first place.
Yeah.
Making this thing a controversy, even for the last 3-4 years, pushing this thing around the country and getting it passed through various states, bringing it to the attention of these legislators all over the country that this is how it's supposed to work, really, right? And
whatever fraction of the general public cares can suddenly realize there's an option they never thought of before. They never considered that at the state level, there might be some way to put up some kind of feeble resistance to the war machine.
Yeah. And listen, I think we've been trying so hard for so long to get over this image of like Janis Joplin with her giant silly glasses and Dayglow bubble letters from the hippie Vietnam War era days. That like, this is what it means to oppose war, is to just be all flowers and utopian. Let's just sing "Give Peace a Chance" 1,000 times till everybody just kills himself, and now we have peace, right? And that we've been trying to get out from under that, right? Well, here are guys who are all Republicans, right? So, and they're going around the country using the legislative process in exactly the way that they're supposed to, invoking George Washington's Constitution sincerely the same one they took a blood oath to and meant in a way a lot of these other bureaucrats don't when they swear the same allegiance to it. And they are making an impression. They are making history already. They are changing minds. They're changing the dynamic of the reality that we live in, of who is the anti-war movement in America. What is it that they're up to? Where do they come from? And what are they about? And they're Ron Paul folk. And in other words, they're unimpeachable, man. They're awesome. And Dan, in his own small way, was a hero in Afghanistan. Diego Rivera was a ranger in Iraq War II. And, a lot of their associated guys fought in the wars. And so they absolutely know of that which they speak and are perfectly capable of taking on any hawk. And then, so now to your other point about Hegseth there. And it goes to show how important this is and how serious the Pentagon takes it, is they'll have officers from the National Guard come out in their full dress with all their medals and everything and say, oh, no, you can't do this, or they'll take all our money away. They'll take our helicopters away. They'll take, whatever, pork from us if we do this. And so we can't do it. And it's been very effective. But the thing is they got Pete Hegseth to promise that he would support it. And now he's gone radio silent since becoming Secretary of Defense. But that's almost good enough. He certainly has not backpedaled and contradicted himself on it. I don't want to say yet, because I'm hoping that he won't. I don't think, he will. And Dan McKnight said it was a big deal when I brought up at one of these hearings, because I've been testifying in person in some cases and, mostly over Zoom calls in front of these state legislative bodies. And I called those guys out and I said, hey, before you officers open your big mouths, you should probably call the Office of the Secretary of Defense and find out what your new position is on this, because you have civilian leadership and the new Secretary of Defense is avowedly a supporter of this.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to go home and figure out what your actual orders are before you say a word. And I didn't really realize, but I guess McKnight was in the room, or I forget, but he said, man, you could have, I think he was there, whatever state that was. He said, man, you could hear a pin drop in there. Boy, everybody just gasped. They couldn't believe that. And, and he's a civilian now, but as a former sergeant, he just ain't used to talking that way to his superior officers or whatever. But I don't give a damn. And I wasn't being particularly disrespectful, but I've never been under the authority of a military leader. I'm a civilian.
Yeah.
So I don't have to take this shit, basically. And so, but he said that seemed to really be meaningful to people in the audience and to the legislators there and whoever, that they were like, oh, man. And then I think, I forget how he said this. Perhaps their testimony was a bit muted after that, at least. I think they did go ahead and testify, but I think they were maybe not as strident as they might have been in that case. So
that is great.
We gotta keep the pressure up. And by the way, this always has to come with a call to action when we talk about this stuff, because I know that, listen, I got veterans contact me constantly and have for decades now, quite frankly, in a row. I mean, literally 2, but yeah. And I know the same is for you too, that you get contacted by these guys all the time.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Our audiences are full of anti-war veterans. And so I know everybody's got jobs and families and whatever their struggles and whatever they're dealing with. But if you're looking for something to do along these lines, here's the actual mission to go on, right? You can just be another libertarian with a beard on Facebook, or you could actually participate in a thing and help get a law passed that would really make a difference, or at the very least, go to show who it is that leads the anti-war movement in America and what their priorities are and how they're going about it in such a purely Ron Paulian way and such a great libertarian way. So I just think it's the most important thing in the world, dude. Other than antiwar.com, I can't think of a more important project for our side.
Well, say the website again. You said it before.
bringourtroopshome.us and defendtheguard.us.
Okay.
And, right. Oh, and by the way, let me elaborate on that. When I say go and help, yes, give them money. They need it. Especially people, riding the Bitcoin bubble right now and doing great. Go ahead and break off some for these guys doing great work. But, they also need people to phone bank. And the thing is phone banking. Look, I mean, this is the Tom Woods show, right? No one is here saying like, oh yeah, democracy is great and just believe hard and call your congressman, young man, or whatever. Like we're not talking about that. But we are talking about calling your state congressman, your state rep, and your state senators. And we're not saying it's a magic wish and that's just by golly, Schoolhouse Rock and then democracy kicks in or whatever. But the point is, it does have a real effect. And I mentioned Diego Rivera, who works with Dan. Diego is funny because he talked to me about this. He just stopped trying to convince anybody of anything. These state legislators, some of them like it and are perfectly convincible and don't even need convincing or whatever. But for the rest of them, it's all just about intimidation. Listen, do you want to have a political career or do you want us to destroy it for you? Because we're perfectly happy to destroy it for you. And he's just a bully now. He's sick and tired of trying to deal with these people. So, and he knows what he's doing. He's a really great activist. And so when you sign up, especially you war veterans I'm talking to, when you sign up to go, and everybody else too, when you sign up, he teaches you how to phone bank and he'll like give a signed task. These 2 days on this week, we're calling these senators from this committee in this state. It's all highly organized. And this is the guy you really want to concentrate on. This guy you want to bully. This guy you want to be sweet to, and whatever it is. And it's all coordinated. He knows exactly what he's doing with that. So it's not running off on another fool's errand like the last time you went to war. You're dealing with highly skilled political activists who are, really experienced at doing exactly this in the state legislatures for the past few years now, and with an Army Ranger's determination to get it done for real.
You mentioned at the beginning Michael Bolden and the 10th Amendment Center, and that this is an example of their model legislation. Let me go back to that. Do you mean to say that Michael Bolden and his organization, in effect, developed the idea for Defend the Guard?
I believe so, yes. If I remember it right, and I screw up stuff like this, but I believe, Tom, that they, I forget maybe if I'm doing a chicken and an egg thing, but I believe that they worked with Pat McGeehan from the beginning, and maybe he got it from them. I think he got it from them.
Well, remember, they also, Mike Meharry came up with the idea for the NSA to turn off the water, because it turns out that the huge facility in Utah requires so much water to cool its machines that Utah could simply refuse to provide it. And there's no law that says they have to.
That was awesome.
And, so that just goes to show, doesn't this go to show that, the 10th Amendment Center runs on a shoestring out of Michael Bolden's apartment. Meanwhile, we have these think tanks with 9-figure budgets and endowments that issue policy reports that go into the garbage. So this goes to show you can actually come up with new ideas that get some traction. Like, the Defense Department actually has to worry about this now, but no one does, because they'd rather just have their cute little sinecure and not do anything.
Yeah. Well, and especially Michael Bolden, man, he's a talent. He's a once in a generation guy.
Yeah.
So, he brings a lot to the table. And that's the thing is, if he says, we should do this, he'll figure it out. He'll make sure the model legislation will read correctly. You know what I mean? It's not going to be full of mistakes. It's going to be just right. So, yeah, he's really killing it over there. And again, all you Bitcoin bubblers out there who got too many Lamborghinis, you don't know what to do with them all, donate to the 10th Amendment Center, man. Those guys need all of our support.
Yeah. I agree completely. And Michael lives pretty frugally. He doesn't drive a Lamborghini with the money. He puts it into this thing. Not. He's like you. Yep.
It all goes back into the product, man.
Your big luxury is your $1,000 boat you got off Craigslist. The Libertarian Institute, the money is well spent.
I spent all day yesterday trying to buff some of all that oxidization off of the outside. It's all kind of faded. Trying to make it shiny again. A little elbow grease. But someday your supporters are going to get together and surprise you. There's going to be big shiny new boat outside your door. No.
And part of you is going to say, no, wait, hang on. Part of you is going to say, oh my goodness, I'm so happy. And the other part's going to say, do you know how much the maintenance on this damn thing's going to be?
No, dude. I just need new carpet. Right.
Okay.
I actually, man, I really stupidly last summer, I left the cover off in the Texas sun and it just bleached the vine so badly. It's like gray now instead of tan. So like I really need to replace that. I don't know why I did that. Just lazy. It didn't rain for 3 months, so why put the tarp on? You know what I mean? But like, the sun. But you know what? You know how I could one day probably afford to get new vinyl for my $1,000 boat would be if the new Scott Horton Academy for Foreign Policy and Freedom is a great success. What do you think the chances are of that?
I think the chances are pretty good. Well, as long as you brought it up, let's mention. I think we might have mentioned it before.
I should have.
You're going to be, I don't know, you launch that in maybe, who knows, 5-6 weeks, something like that. But
I think so. I finished recording Obama this morning. So I'm about to start the Trump chapter, or Trump 1 chapter, I guess. And then I got to do Biden and the war. But I'm almost done with the Eastern Europe course that I'm doing. Ramsey Baroud has one more coming. Bill Bupert, I know, is hard at work on his courses.
Well, let me tell people. So the idea of it is, it's in a way like my Liberty
classroom.
Yeah. Except it's Scott Horton, and it's mostly foreign policy, and it's a lot of Scott's brain. Except the difference is, instead of Scott speaking, 100 miles an hour, he's going to like help you try and remember half the things that he says. Yeah. And there's nothing like it anywhere. That it tells the anti-establishment, that is to say, true version of events, whether it's Iran, Ukraine, the Middle East, whatever it is. That's what Scott Horton Academy is going to be about, and I want to support this as much as I can. And I will say that while we're waiting, there is something waiting for listeners of this podcast or any other podcast. There's something waiting for you that you're going to like very much at ScottHortonAcademy.com. You're gonna like what's waiting for you at ScottHortonAcademy.com, even while we're waiting for it to open.
That's true. It's I don't think anyone could possibly be let down. It's so cool.
No, it is. It's awesome.
Enter your email address, and then that way you'll be the first to know when we go live. But yeah, I mean, I got 2 massive courses on the Middle East and the new Cold War with Russia, basically walking you through my last 2 books in slow motion and explaining all of that to the nth degree. And then we also, we got Bill Bupert on how America lost every war since 1945. We got James Bovard on his 40 years of investigative journalism on all different crucial subjects and a lot of funny stories, and Waco and who knows what. And then CJ Kilmer is going to do why Woodrow Wilson was the worst person who ever lived. And then one leftist brought in Ramsey Baroud, my Palestinian exile friend. And he is doing a huge course on Israel-Palestine, which is sure to be fantastic. And he's a really brilliant guy, a wonderful guy, regular writer for antiwar.com for many years, and regular guest on my show. And then you got one more for us, right? You're adding a guy to the roster here. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I dug up a theologian for you. We'll keep his name nameless so he doesn't get abused between now and then. But okay. He's trained at Oxford. He's lowercase o Orthodox Christian, doing a course on, in effect, the problems with dispensationalism, which is where this idea that Christians need to support the present regime in Israel because then they'll be raptured and all that stuff. He's going to go through the history in Christendom of what the understanding was about Israel and the church and the relationship between the two of them, and all that stuff, how Christians historically thought about that until like the late 1800s, basically. So I would say this course has been overdue for about 70 years. So yeah. I said, if you're going to have this academy, Scott, you got to have that course. So I found a guy and he's going to do it. Hey, everybody, I have a great way to put more money in your pocket, effective immediately. If you're a business owner or run a team in a large company and you want to stop paying high prices for software, regain your digital sovereignty, and you want software that's flexible, you need to use Federated Computer. Federated Computer provides all the software you need for your business or team without the high prices, no creepy data collection, and total flexibility to use your software for your business goals. What's more, a typical Federated Computer customer saves $300 per month per employee. With Federated Computer, you get email, calendar, groupware, file management, Office 365 documents, spreadsheets, presentations, video conferencing, group chat, CRM, databases, appointment management, and so much more. They don't charge by the user. Instead, you pay a single low monthly price for your business. How does $120 per month for your whole business sound? And that's for everything. Tom Woods Show listeners have been saving big using Federated Computer. A dental practice reduced its monthly software costs by $7,000 per month. A construction firm saved so much money they were able to hire a salesperson to increase sales. Tom Woods listener companies use Federated Computer to talk privately with each other without worrying conversations are going to end up part of some AI chatbot. No need to worry about change. Federated Computer customer support is there to help you every step of the way. I still don't understand the magic these guys must employ to make it all happen. Now, only for the Tom Woods audience, if you use code WOODS at checkout, you'll save even more, 30% off your first year. They even offer a free month to check things out. How do they do it? Federated Computer is run literally by the same people who invented cloud computing. These guys know their stuff. They enjoy empowering customers with tools to find success in your business. Do yourself a favor. Take advantage of this offer now. Use code WOODS for 30% off your first year at federated.computer. That's federated.computer.
Yeah, that's really great. And look, I know that the times are changing on that. I had this conversation with Orrin McIntyre on the show a week or two ago, where he was brought up to believe all that stuff, man. The Left Behind series from Walmart and Satan's New World Order, and you got to support war with Iraq to make the rapture come true and all that. And then he just, at some point, he just decided like, that ain't right. You know what I mean? And whatever point it occurred to him that he grew out of it or whatever it was. He didn't tell that specific story, but he said, he was raised that way. And there's a whole generation of evangelical Christians who are moving away from that. And he was urging me like, hey man, he didn't say it, but it may have been a reference to my Matt Kibbe interview at PorkFest, because they're both at the Blaze. So possibly he saw that. And I was like probably too dismissive about that stuff or like too insulting about it. But he's like, listen, man, if you're trying to get people to change one aspect of their religious faith, tread real carefully. You know what I mean? You can't really rub it in their face too much or they're just going to double down. So, be gentle, but encourage people to think more broadly that like, it really is possible that Ted Cruz's Sunday school teacher really maybe didn't know what she was talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on. So, and look, I think it's the broken promise of the millennium, right? The millennium came, everybody supported the war, and then we didn't get our rapture. So what gives, man?
Yeah.
And, and I think as Douglas McGregor says, time wins more arguments than reason. And what just happened was, it's just like, those promises expired, right? Pat Robertson was a fraud. Sorry. It just turns out that he was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that general subject, last week there was some Israeli bombing in Damascus, and they gave official reasons for why they did that. But can you explain what, in your view, was going on there?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're taking advantage. The state of Syria sort of kind of doesn't exist anymore. I mean, America had already broken off and kept the entire Kurdish region in the northeast autonomous under American protection there, and occupied a huge part of had enough troops to keep control of major swaths of the far east of the country. And then after Israel and Turkey and the United States supported the Al-Qaeda overthrow of the government last winter, I guess, late November and early December, when Al-Qaeda took over the country and ran Assad out of power. I mean, Netanyahu bragged about it. He went to the border and said, this is all because I beat up Hezbollah so bad that they weren't able to come and help. This is all because of, all of our economic war and everything that we've done to weaken Assad and Hezbollah. So congratulations to us for helping Al-Qaeda take over the country, he said.
And there were Americans who said the same thing. Ben Shapiro.
Oh, yeah.
They were happy about this.
No question where his loyalties lie. And that was his explanation. Yeah, but Hezbollah. Yeah, but Iran. Yeah, but the Shiites. But it wasn't Hezbollah that knocked our towers down. I don't know. I know. Supposedly, never mind. This bothers me. So listen, there was a thing back in 1981 called the Oded Yanon Plan. People can read this. Oded, O-D-E-D, Yinon, Y-I-N-O-N. I think we've talked about this in the past, Tom. This is sort of proto-clean break, before the clean break. And it's completely crazy, right? It starts out with the Soviets are surely about to conquer the entire planet and enslave us all under one world communism. Therefore, poor little Israel will have no choice but to eke out its, existence and its, sustainability by weakening and crippling all of the Muslim states around them. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, everybody. We want to essentially overthrow governments, destabilize, support terrorism, support civil wars, do everything we can to break these nation states up to not even really be nation states anymore, to simply be warring tribes of factions on the ground. Picture just some Arab with an AK over his head, right, with essentially no power compared to a real state army, as Israel has. And so in other words, like the most extreme case of peace through strength, right? Or peace through total dominance over their neighbors. Or maybe not even peace, but at least their security by overwhelmingly, or having overwhelming power compared to their neighbors, and breaking them all up, doing everything they can to encourage factionalism in all the Arab states in order to achieve that. And I think that's a bit of what they see here. Like, who knows what's going on in the Israeli cabinet? And I just don't have the stomach to read enough Israeli press these days, honestly. But and if they're even covering this, they must be somewhat torn about how to treat this issue, because these are bin Ladenites. And even though al-Jawlani, who now calls himself al-Shara, who always was and still is a bin Ladenite, even though he is sucking up to the United States and Israel now and is trying to get along, he's still surrounded by a bunch of crazies. And I think, as I've said before, if he continues to appease the West this blatantly, this badly for too long, one of his own guys is going to cut his head off and replace him. You know what I mean? They're not exactly ISIS. If ISIS were the absolute most radical and revolutionary of the bin Ladenite types, Patrick Coburn compared them to the Khmer Rouge, then al-Nusra obviously has entered politics. Actually, I have two books that I haven't read yet, but they're written by War Party guys about, rationalizing and justifying al-Nusra's transformation into a political movement and a more acceptable state movement to take over the country. And they clearly were groomed by the Americans and the Saudis and the Turks that, look, if you guys want power, you have to chill out on the cutting people's heads off and suicide attacks and all this stuff and act in a slightly more acceptable way. And we'll accept you because we hate the Shiites more, believe us. So we'll do this for you if you guys will chill out a bit. So, but they still are essentially the same guys who waged a terrorist war 15 years ago through 10 years ago under the Obama administration, a horrific, dirty war in Syria. So I think that's at least the excuse, Tom, I think, for the Israelis to say, well, we just cannot have them militarize the south of Syria. Assad had a deal with the Druze, but these new bin Ladenites don't. And so Israel, which of course kidnapped all the Druze on the Golan Heights, right, and won't let them have their independence at all, and doesn't give a damn about them, was perfectly willing 15 years ago and 10 years ago to back the bin Ladenites even when they were killing the Druze. You might remember the case when some so-called Israeli Druze, Golan Heights Druze, ambushed an ambulance that was an Israeli ambulance carrying bin Laden fighters, al-Nusra fighters, back to the front. And because it was the same group of guys who've been killing their guys. So the Israelis don't give a damn about the Druze. And, they're Muslims. But they're a great excuse then for Israel to carve out a piece of Syria. And they've already taken, I don't want to say it wrong, Mount Hermon, is that how you say it? The big mountain outside of Damascus. And they're like on the outskirts of Damascus right now. So you have the Turks are kind of dominant in the north. And you know what? I got a great email from a guy. I meant to follow up. Maybe I tried to follow up with the guy. Some guy sent me a great email saying, man, you need to catch up on what's going on between Turkey and Israel because now that Syria more or less no longer exists, it's a huge fight between the two. It's not a real compromise. It's a contest between Netanyahu and Erdogan for supremacy in Syria. The bin Ladenites, of course, are the weak sister. They are that warring tribe from the Yannan plan, right? Right after Israel helped them take over, Israel bombed their entire military. They didn't let the bin Ladenites take over the Syrian state. They destroyed the Syrian state. They blasted every last armory. They sank their entire navy, blasted whatever planes they had, destroyed what's left of their military force so that the bin Ladenites couldn't have it. And so, they're already taken. They've already taken all of southern Lebanon up to the Litani River. I remember, I think it was on your show, I said that probably 10 or 15 years ago that, the Israelis want to take southern Lebanon. I learned that from Eric Margulies. And some guy emailed me about how I had no idea what I was talking about. Yeah, well, anyway, they got all of southern Lebanon up to the Litani River now, Tom. Now that they've bombed the crap out of and through a terrorist attack, through the pager attack, severely weakened Hezbollah and driven them back. And so, Netanyahu is taking full advantage, man. He's gotten away with murder here. He's essentially annihilated the Gazan society, the Palestinian society in Gaza. They keep calling it voluntary immigration is their plan. They literally said, the defense minister, Tom Katz, the defense minister said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to build a camp and we're going to concentrate all the Palestinians there. This is 2 weeks ago. Everybody read antiwar.com every day. I don't know what else to tell you. We're going to concentrate all the Palestinians in this camp down there where Rafah used to be, where they basically, in effect, carpet bombed it off the face of the earth. And on its rubble, they're going to build this camp and they're going to force the Palestinians all to assemble there and then try a way to force them to voluntarily emigrate after completely destroying their area's ability to sustain their lives, force them to, it's just like in the mythology, it was actually a Mossad agent who said this, an undercover agent in the first place who said this, that we're going to push all the Jews into the sea or whatever. But this is like in the mythology, right? Of what the Arabs would do to the Israelis if they could. That's what the Israelis are doing to the poor people of the Gaza Strip. And they're totally getting away with it. They severely weakened Hezbollah. They killed their strong leader, Nasrallah, and did the pager attack and heavy missile bombardment. They helped al-Qaeda overthrow the government in Syria. And, Iraq, even though, as we often talk about, George W. Bush put Iran's best friends in power in Iraq, their army doesn't really do anything. Their national government doesn't seem to really intervene against Israel very much, although there are these sort of deniable Shiite militias that seem to be mostly under the control of Iran, maybe more than Iraq, who from time to time fire some rockets. So they're certainly, demonstrated to be on Iran's side of the ledger, even though they don't really threaten Israel's position anywhere. Although they could potentially, at some point. But and then you have the Houthis down there in Yemen, and they're still firing off rockets and drones. But from Netanyahu's point of view, they're taking acceptable collateral damage from that. You know what I mean? A rocket and a drone go off from time to time, and nobody can do anything about it unless we send in the 82nd Airborne. The Houthis aren't going anywhere, and maybe even if we do, that regime change was accomplished back in 2015, and it's proven impossible to undo since then. So, and it was all, as I demonstrate in enough already, and as we've talked about on the show before, that was all a direct consequence of Obama's previous policy anyway, that caused the Shiites to come to power in Sana'a in 2015, 2014, 2015. So anyway, and then now with the war against Iran, they completely decimated Iran's anti-aircraft and have demonstrated they can have complete air supremacy over the country, and the Americans as well. They've set back the Iranian nuclear program severely, although they were not able to accomplish a regime change. They obviously were hoping that the government would crumble under the assault, which it didn't. They threatened, did you see this? It was in the Washington Post, where they threatened a bunch of Iranian generals. You better turn on the Ayatollah or we're going to kill your wife and kids. We're going to kill your families. Yeah. And they didn't give in to that.
Yeah, no one did. Yeah.
But Trump did bomb and they did too. The Israelis bombed them as well, and Trump bombed their nuclear facilities. There are differing accounts of how severely damaged they are, but they have not achieved as Trump called it, the obliteration of their nuclear program. And it seems very unlikely, Tom, that they hit it hard enough that the Ayatollah is just going to give up, because there's no way for him to reconstitute it now without losing it again. On the other hand, Trump has proven that bluff called. I'll just bomb you. And he's proven that he's willing to consider, if the Israelis say so at least, he's willing to consider any enrichment and any, actual nuclear program in Iran to be a nuclear weapons program, and he'll just bomb it again. I don't know exactly, where we stand with that. I think, there were at least some reports that the Iranians were bragging, I don't know whether it was true or not, that they had another secret facility already up and running, or where they were at least installing centrifuges and in cascades to get right back to enrichment again as soon as they can. Seems like the Ayatollah has insisted all this time that he is not going to back down on enrichment. I'm not really sure why the recent strikes would force him to change his mind on that. If he's willing to get bombed about it once, he's willing to get bombed about it twice. And they could just bury the stuff under a deeper mountain. I've seen analysis why sending in ground troops to try to take over these facilities can't work either. And so, what are we going to escalate to nuclear bunker buster bombs to get down into these facilities, or at some point just normalize relations and figure out a way to tolerate enrichment, which is perfectly reasonable and is Iran's right under the NPT, which is America's treaty that we asked them to sign, that says that they have the unalienable right to peaceful nuclear technology. So, but anyway, on the larger question, Iran has definitely got, lost a couple of teeth here, in fistfight terms, from this brawl that Israel got America into against them here. So Israel's position in the region, is better than it's looked in a long time, I think, from their point of view, their strength versus their neighbors.
As I told you, I'm here at Mises U, so I have to record my episodes quickly and then get back over there because of my obligations there. So I won't keep you any longer. But geez, you brought up stuff that seems to demand further comment. So let me just say one thing that I mentioned the other day with Clint Russell. We don't need to talk about Mark Levin and that he's a bad guy. Like, we can assume people understand that. But the other day, I don't know if you saw this, Levin, of course, during the Iran thing, Levin was pushing and pushing and pushing for Trump to bomb, and he hated every indication he was hearing that there might be any negotiations still going on. So bomb, bomb, bomb. And then he was unhappy that they didn't go far enough. And he was a never Trumper at the beginning. But now all of a sudden, Trump loves him. And Levin the other day was telling everybody, you got to move on from the Epstein stuff. I'm sure that's entirely coincidental. You got to move on from the Epstein stuff. And then just the other day, Trump tweeted two separate things. Let's see. Well, one of them was, you got to go read Mark Levin's book. He's got a great new book and everybody needs to read it. So he promotes Levin there. And then secondly, Levin was on Fox News, again, telling people, forget about Epstein. And Trump says, everybody go turn on Fox News and listen to Mark Levin. I mean, I don't know what Mark Levin has on him at this point, but something weird is going on. So there's some kind of arrangement or deal going on there, because you don't promote, I mean, who cares about Mark Levin's book? No normal person wants to read that. So I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that Mark Levin is a kingmaker in the U.S., but I am saying that he's supporting Trump pretty hard on a number of things, particularly Epstein, and Trump in return is pushing him harder than he ever has. I guess we just leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things about this. The worst thing about Trump has always been his Zionism. And it's not like he's a true believer. It's that he doesn't give a damn. And these guys got money, and it's good politics to do what they say and to get along with them. You might remember in 2016, he spoke before AIPAC and he challenged him. He goes, I don't need your stinking money. I'm already rich. How are you going to buy me now? And he called Marco Rubio Sheldon Adelson's perfect little puppet. See, Sheldon Adelson gives him some money and he dances like a little monkey or whatever. I'm paraphrasing that part. But you know how Trump is. Everything is the worst, like turned up to 10 type hyperbole. So
Yeah.
These are bribes. You hear me? Bribes whenever it comes to anybody else. But then Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam started giving Trump hundreds of millions of dollars at a time. I think they're up to $600 million. Now Sheldon is finally dead. But Miriam Adelson, she's actually an Israeli. At least he was from here. Both of them made all their money in gambling in China, in Macau. And this is the money that rules the Republican Party. And Trump is clearly answerable to them and to Likud. And he's been a good friend of Netanyahu all along. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, used to let Netanyahu sleep in his bed. And he'd go sleep on the couch when Netanyahu would come to New York City. Is how close he is with the Kushner family. And so every conflict of interest Trump has here is pro-Israel and none against. Right. And then so when his base is mad about it, he's like, well, tough. Screw you guys. As you saw with his Epstein post. Listen, you either love me or you want to know more about this Epstein thing. Choose now. You know what I mean? Is what he's saying. I don't even want your support anyway. If you're one of these kooks, we're all caught up with his Epstein stuff, which is just like the Russiagate hoax, he said. Like, come on. Oh, the Democrats cooked this all up about Bill Clinton's good friend, Jeffrey Epstein, the child rapist, who was convicted of this and all the rest. It had nothing to do. There's no correlation with the Russiagate hoax whatsoever. And trying to push all that. And then, so you see Mark Levin too. Mark Levin comes to town and says, look, man, do whatever Netanyahu says. He's right. And you want to be tough. And what are the Iranians going to do? You're going to bomb them. You're going to get it done. You're going to do your thing. And then he does nothing. Then Trump does that. And then Levin does nothing but praise him. And that's what Trump wants, is to be told that he did the right thing, especially when he's being a tough guy. He's like Hillary Clinton in that way. You know what I mean? Like it's his deal. And that's Mark Levin's job, is to have no principle or anything, but simply if it's time to scorn and scold, then you do that. If it's time to butter the guy up, then you do that. And so, yeah, you're doing good, Trump. You're doing good, says Mark Levin. And he goes, yeah, I'm doing real good, Mark Levin, ain't I, huh? And then that's just how he is. That's how he always has been. He's, and you can see that's how he treats everyone else too. Everyone else either gets praise or condemnation. It's the same way that, he needs to be validated by everybody else. And so he's just joined a gang, and his gang is the Zionists. And as we've all noticed, when it comes to Zionism or Americanism, when they're both in utter contradiction to each other, Zionism wins. For example, the Joe Biden administration, and Trump doesn't seem to have a problem with this whatsoever, they prefer al-Qaeda rule Damascus than the Alawites, who are friends with the Shiites.
It seems like eventually there has to be a great awakening among the American public, and then you visit the mall and you look around, you say, no great awakening is coming. We're going to need to just go with the minority we have now, hope we can make some progress. But I'm going to have to roll so I can get back over to Mises U.
Sure. Well, let me say one hopeful thing, Tom, which is...
I want that. Yes.
Yeah, everybody used to believe in the Iraq War until they didn't anymore. And it's the same thing here with Israel, where they just taken for advantage. There's that quote of Netanyahu when he's being secretly recorded and laughing about how he took advantage of and manipulated Bill Clinton. And the settler lady goes, geez, baby, I don't know, man. Are you sure you should use and abuse the Americans like that? They might resent it. And he laughs and he says, let me tell you something. America's a thing that is easily moved. 80% of them support us. It's absurd. Well, you know what? I heard that and I resent it. And I like repeating it to other people so that they'll resent it too. That why in the world should we be moved by Israel to support them in committing their deadly sins and at our expense, when, all of this is much more likely, it already has, caused terrorism against the United States of America, against innocent American civilians who have to pay the price for Israel's sins. Enough of that. And why should anyone believe that anymore? They had to drum up all that stuff about the rapture and the end times because it was all they had. There was no reasonable argument for why America needs to die because Saddam Hussein gives a little bit of money to Hamas and because Netanyahu wants an oil pipeline to Haifa. That's not good enough. So they have to lie. And I think people have got to just I think more and more they are snapping out of it and feel like they're being taken advantage of, and they are. And so, there comes a point where there's a break, right, in the public opinion, in the overall consciousness. Are we for this or against it? And on the Democratic side, I don't know if you saw this thing on MSNBC. They show this huge number of people, like 73% of Democrats side with the Palestinians now. And the numbers are going up on the right, less so, of course, but that's where the battle is. And we got Tucker Carlson's on our side, and he's the most important conservative thinker and personality in America. And Dave Smith is doing a huge part of this as well. Everywhere he goes, showing he's leaning right. On top of that, he's Jewish, and he ain't putting up with this one bit, and neither should you. And just, you saw the cheers that he got and that Tucker Carlson got at Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA last week. The time, it is a turning point. Times are changing. People are getting over it. And I think I mentioned this before. Right after October 7th, Jack Posobiec had me on to explain what was going on. He could have just had Mark Levin on. Yeah. And he turned to antiwar.com to get what's really the truth here. So I think, times are changing. We're making real progress.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you ending on that note of hope. Let's remember libertarianinstitute.org, ScottHortonAcademy.com. And then finally, but no commentary from you because I have to wrap up or Lou Rockwell's going to get upset with me. I know you're going to the Ron Paul barbecue with Dave Smith on August 9th. So I hope a bunch of you will be there because it's going to be the greatest time in the world. The website is ronpaulbbq.com. And Scott, thanks once again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.